Bro tried to quit life, and the apocalypse said, clock back in. Zhao Ming lost his company, got betrayed by his best friend, went broke, climbed a rooftop. Then zombies pulled up before he could even rage quit properly. Now the world's collapsing, people getting eaten, mutant zombies running around like Dark Souls enemies on cocaine. And somehow this depressed loser unlocks the most ridiculous system imaginable. Not a hero system, a zombie employee management system. Bro can literally recruit and control zombies like they're workers on payroll. His first employee, a psycho zombie girl, who beats undead monsters like she's clearing overdue office tasks. And every new zombie employee gives him broken abilities, insane rewards, and turns this man from a suicidal nobody into the CEO of the apocalypse. At the start we see, a man slowly climbed a staircase when suddenly his key slipped from his hand and clattered onto the ground below. He paused for a second and turned slightly as if he was about to pick it up, but then stopped midway. After all, he wouldn't be needing that key anymore. A few moments later, he reached the rooftop. While casually drinking from a can, we finally meet Xiaoming, 26 years old, a man who came to the city chasing success with his closest friends. They struggled together from the bottom, suffered together, and finally managed to build a company that was beginning to succeed. But just when life was finally moving forward, one of those brothers decided to speedrun betrayal and stole everything from him. After that incident, Xiaoming thought about going back home countless times, but he had already lost everything. Money, trust, purpose, all gone. The only thing left in his head was anger, confusion, and enough suffering to make a therapist quit on the spot. Eventually, he climbed over the rooftop railing. He thought about how he had cut himself off from everyone around him until all that remained was pain. And unable to endure it anymore, he finally decided to jump, believing there was no other way out. As he fell through the air, one final thought crossed his mind. At least now, he could finally be free. Suddenly, Xiaoming opened his eyes to the sound of heavy rain. Confused, he sat upright and wondered why the hell he couldn't even die properly. He had jumped from a ridiculously tall building and still survived. At this point, the man was questioning if he was genuinely useless at absolutely everything. Then he noticed something strange. His hands hurt badly despite having no visible injuries. Nearby, groaning sounds echoed through the rain. A lightning bolt suddenly split across the dark city sky, illuminating the figure beside him, and Xiaoming's eyes widened in horror. A man with rotting flesh was crawling toward him with an outstretched arm, groaning like a broken engine while desperately trying to grab him. Yeah, that was definitely a zombie. Xiaoming instantly screamed and bolted away like his survival instincts finally clocked back into work after filing for resignation earlier. As he ran through the rain, his thoughts spiraled out of control. Was that really a zombie? Was this the afterlife? But the more he thought about it, the more he realized this couldn't be death. He could feel the rain, his heartbeat, his breathing, the pain in his body. His brain was processing all of it, which meant one horrifying thing. He was still alive. When he finally reached a busier street, his expression completely froze. Zombies were everywhere. The man had locked himself inside his apartment for 1 month after losing everything, and apparently the world used that time to uninstall civilization entirely. Suddenly, a young boy came sprinting toward him, screaming for help. But before reaching safety, the kid tripped over a broken floor tile and crashed face first onto the street. The zombies instantly piled onto him. Xiaoming stood there horrified as the poor kid was devoured alive. Mouth wide open, body trembling, he finally accepted that these things weren't movie props anymore. They were really eating people, realizing he'd be next if he kept spectating like an NPC. Xiaoming turned and ran again. Another lightning bolt tore through the rainy sky, and this time he noticed something strange standing among the horde ahead. A girl. Unlike the other zombies, she wasn't moving at all. She just stood there silently in the middle of the crowd. Then suddenly, the zombie girl let out a sharp scream and exploded forward with terrifying speed straight toward Xiaoming. The guy nearly had a heart attack on the spot. He barely managed to dodge as she blitzed past him. The zombie girl rushed around the corner expecting to catch him, only to stop in confusion when he wasn't where she expected. Watching her movements carefully, Xiaoming quickly realized something important. Normal zombies weren't actually that slow. But this girl? She was built different. The realization hit him so hard that he let out a shocked laugh and muttered that he was definitely dead this time. Right then, loud banging erupted behind a nearby door while he kept running through the building. He wondered why he was even afraid anymore when he had literally jumped off a rooftop earlier trying to die. But despite all that despair talk from before, his body clearly disagreed. The moment zombies started chasing him, survival instincts activated instantly, because getting eaten alive and jumping willingly were two very different experiences. As he sprinted upstairs, he nearly crashed into two zombies near the staircase before swerving around them in panic. Behind him, the zombie girl smashed through the blocked door with a brutal kick. Xiaoming kept climbing while his thoughts spiraled again. If he really wanted death, then why was he running this hard? Why was his body refusing to give up? He ran into two more zombies on the next floor and suddenly remembered confronting his former friend Jiang before everything collapsed. The man he trusted most. The man he called his best friend. The same bastard who ruined his life. The so-called best friend looked at Xiaoming with a smile and casually told him that he clearly didn't understand basic common sense. No wonder he had fallen this far. Then the bastard twisted the knife deeper, saying people without value should be treated like trash and thrown away. Another painful memory flashed through Xiaoming's mind. He had desperately tried to get alone, practically begging for help, but the woman coldly rejected him because his score was too low. As he kept sprinting through the building, Xiaoming realized something important. Earlier, he genuinely wanted to leave this world behind. But after seeing zombies chewing on people like midnight snacks, his survival instincts suddenly reinstalled themselves at full speed. He kicked a zombie directly in the chest while yelling at it not to touch him. At this point, the man was more determined to live than ever before. He charged up the staircase, shoving past countless undead while screaming for them to get the hell out of his way. Despite everything, a grin slowly spread across his face. Just moments ago, he wanted to die, but now he had completely changed his mind. If death wasn't going to erase his pain anyway, then there was no point surrendering anymore. Unfortunately, the zombie girl finally caught up to him. She stared at him with pure hatred burning in her eyes before launching herself toward him from behind like a missile with anger management issues. Xiaoming instantly realized one thing. If he wanted revenge on the people who ruined his life, he first needed to survive this nightmare. Right then, a strange system notification suddenly activated before his eyes. The zombie girl's strike barely missed, smashing straight into the wall beside his head. Xiaoming stared at her arm in confusion while glowing screens appeared out of nowhere. The system announced that subject Xiaoming had been redirected and assigned his first task. Then another line appeared stating that an eligible candidate had been found. The exhausted man could barely process what he was reading. He wondered if the employee the system mentioned was somehow the zombie girl standing right in front of him. The system then asked if he wished to accept the employee. At the same time, Xiaoming remembered the massive horde waiting outside the staircase. So the man raised his hand dramatically and admitted that in a situation like this, he really had no better option. Then he slammed his hand down and accepted the employee request. Immediately, the zombie girl wrapped her arms around herself like she was hugging her own body. Tears began forming in the corners of her eyes, while the system flashed a bright red screen announcing successful employee activation. A moment later, the terrifying zombie transformed before his eyes into a young woman wearing a torn dress with scars spread across her body. Xiaoming still had absolutely no clue what was happening, but he already had a first assignment for his new employee. He pointed downstairs and told her to wipe out the zombies around them. The girl moved instantly. She stepped in front of him and smashed the zombie below the stairs directly into the floor with a brutal strike. Then she grabbed another zombie's arm and flung it backward into a different undead's face. Seeing more zombies closing in, she crouched low and suddenly dropped into a full split, kicking two zombies at the same time. The poor undeads got comboed like they accidentally queued into a fighting game tournament. She rolled across the staircase, recovered instantly, then leapt upward past Xiaoming again. The zombies barely had time to react before she landed in the middle of them and unleashed a cross strike that launched bodies to both sides of the staircase. Meanwhile, Xiaoming just stood there, frozen, watching the chaos unfold in complete disbelief. This man really hired a zombie employee and instantly got premium combat DLC. As the last undead collapsed, he finally let out a relieved breath and muttered that it was finally over. The system immediately congratulated him for completing his first mission and displayed the rewards he had earned. A backpack, 100 points, and a lottery ticket. The rewards instantly lifted his mood. Bro went from suicidal to loot goblin in under 10 minutes. He crouched down and opened the backpack to inspect the contents. Inside were clothes, food, water, and even weapons. Still confused, Xiaoming stared at the floating system screen and wondered what exactly this thing was and what it wanted from him. But honestly, after witnessing zombies sprinting around in the rain, a magical system wasn't even top 5 weirdest things anymore. So he immediately checked the lottery feature. The moment he pressed the huge green button labeled lottery, the system announced that his ticket had been activated. A giant roulette wheel suddenly appeared in front of him and began spinning rapidly, while the system explained that random rewards would be distributed. After several tense seconds, the roulette finally slowed to a stop. The pointer landed near the bottom right section. The system congratulated him for obtaining a memory fragment of Hook Shoyu, and Xiaoming just stared blankly at the screen wondering what kind of nonsense reward that even was. The system displayed the memory fragment, while Xiaoming immediately asked what exactly this thing was supposed to do. Smiling awkwardly, he compared it to those progression drops from video games. Bro already adapted to the apocalypse faster than expected. He stared at the glowing fragment in front of him and wondered how to even use it. The moment he touched it, the fragment burst with light. Before he could react, his entire body was suddenly pulled inside. Still confused, one eye half shut, Xiaoming wondered what the hell just happened. When his vision cleared, he found himself standing in front of a real estate company called Shangxi. Inside, a receptionist was sitting at the front desk while a man walked in from behind him. The man passed directly through Xiaoming like he wasn't even there. That was when he realized something was off. The man walked toward a desk and called out to a girl named Xiaoyu. She politely asked if he needed anything else. Watching from the side, Xiaoming finally understood that he had entered the girl's memories. Xiaoyu's boss awkwardly admitted that although she was extremely competent as a new employee, the company itself was struggling badly. Smiling gently, the girl said it was fine. She explained that she came alone from the countryside without much education, so she was already grateful just to have work. The boss looked guilty while telling her that he could only pay half her salary for now. He promised the rest would come later once the company recovered financially, and Xiaoyu just smiled brightly and thanked him again. Meanwhile, Xiaoming stood there silently watching this girl get financially scammed with premium optimism installed in her soul. The boss praised her hard work once more before leaving. Afterwards, Xiaoyu bent down and picked up a small hair clip. She placed it on her head, looked at herself in the mirror, and happily said it was beautiful since she bought it with her very first paycheck. Then she quietly admitted that ever since she left home, she promised herself she would live happily no matter how difficult life became. One day, she would definitely own her own house. Hearing that, Xiaoming smiled faintly from the side and commented that she was surprisingly optimistic. A moment later, the entire memory suddenly faded away. Xiaoming returned to reality and immediately asked if that was already the end of the memory fragment. The system then displayed a new side mission, returned to the real estate office, and recovered Xiaoyu's hair clip. After seeing the mission rewards, Xiaoming started wondering what exactly employee loyalty even meant in this weird apocalypse management simulator. Still, after witnessing her combat skills earlier, he figured he'd better keep this employee happy. So he looked at Xiaoyu and told her they needed to leave immediately and finish the mission. Sometime later, the two arrived outside the massive Shangxi real estate building. Lights were still glowing faintly inside, while rain continued pouring over the ruined city. Both of them had changed clothes by now. Xiaoyu, now wearing a fresh outfit, immediately resumed kicking zombies across the lobby like unpaid interns. Meanwhile, Xiaoming just stood there watching in disbelief again as she launched undead bodies around the room. While she cleared the zombies, Xiaoming hurried upstairs to search for the ribbon. He searched around the office desks until he finally spotted the hair clip near one of the computers. Excited, he grabbed it and turned around to announce the good news. Only for a zombie body to suddenly fly right over his head. The man nearly had a heart attack on the spot. He immediately yelled at Xiaoyu. That was when he realized something terrifying. Whenever she fought zombies, she absolutely did not care who happened to be nearby. Bodies were getting launched everywhere like rag dolls in a physics engine. Then, in the middle of the chaos, Xiaoyu suddenly stopped moving and quietly stared at him. Xiaoming stared back in confusion. At that exact moment, the system sweetly informed him that the employee's loyalty level was currently very low and that she might have difficulty distinguishing allies from enemies. The man instantly panicked. Xiaoyu was now looking at him the exact same way she looked at zombie meat earlier. So that's what the loyalty stat was for. Fantastic. Xiaoming immediately turned and sprinted toward the nearest room while screaming about this garbage game design. He desperately tried opening the door while Xiaoyu chased after him again for the second time today. He barely managed to slip inside and slammed the door shut before dragging a cabinet over to block it. On the other side, Xiaoyu continuously pounded on the door with terrifying strength. Xiaoming yelled that there was no system protection this time and that the door definitely wouldn't survive much longer. Still breathing heavily, he reminded himself that he already recovered the ribbon. Now all he needed was the remaining unpaid salary from her memory. Finally, he turned around to inspect the room behind him and instantly got jump-scared. Standing there was Xiaoyu's boss, now turned into a zombie, still counting money like the apocalypse hadn't interrupted office hours yet. Xiaoming quickly realized something disgusting about the zombie boss. This bastard really lied to Xiaoyu about the company going bankrupt. Looking at the zombie greedily clutching money even after death, Xiaoming muttered that this guy reminded him way too much of the friend who stole everything from him. Even as a zombie, the man's entire personality was still just money, money, money. Truly a corporate final boss. Meanwhile, the zombie girl outside kept smashing against the door nonstop. The pounding finally snapped Xiaoming out of his thoughts. He walked over to the zombie boss and calmly said he'd only take the 2,000 owed to Xiaoyu and leave the rest behind. The moment he touched the cash, the zombie's hand suddenly shot out and grabbed his arm. Xiaoming froze for a second. The zombie boss slowly stopped counting money and stared at him with that dead-eyed zombie expression. Pulling out his knife, Xiaoming asked if the guy seriously didn't plan on letting go. The zombie instantly lunged at him. Even while his arm was trapped, Xiaoming managed to jump backward and ready his blade. Since he conveniently had a zombie test dummy in front of him, he figured this was the perfect chance to try out his new knife. One clean slash later, the zombie's arm went flying. Xiaoming looked at the severed limb and casually commented that the blade was insanely sharp. Bro immediately started feeling himself after one successful hit. Turning back toward the zombie, he declared that the next strike would finish the job completely. But before he could move again, something slammed into the knife hard enough to send it flying across the room. Xiaoming had no idea what just happened. The zombie boss screamed and instantly tackled him to the ground. Now pinned underneath a rabid office manager, Xiaoming desperately struggled while the zombie lowered its mouth toward his shoulder, trying to bite him. The man panicked. He wondered if this was really the moment he was going to become zombie food after all this character development. Forcing himself to calm down, he quickly started thinking for a way out. Then he remembered the zombie's obsession with money. Maybe that was the key. Stretching his arms sideways with all his strength, he barely managed to grab a nearby stack of bills. Then he tossed the money into the air and yelled for the zombie to look. And somehow it worked. The zombie immediately abandoned him and scrambled toward the falling cash in complete panic like the bills were about to evaporate. Xiaoming instantly realized the distraction worked perfectly. He rushed over, grabbed his knife again, and charged forward while ranting that companies always treated employees like garbage. The zombie boss was still busy gathering money off the floor when he finally noticed Xiaoming rushing him. Xiaoming declared that he completely rejected that kind of garbage mentality and brought the blade down vertically with full force. The slash landed perfectly. The zombie split cleanly into two halves that dropped to opposite sides of the room. Standing there with the blade in hand, Xiaoming quietly stated that the company he planned to build would never abuse its workers. Instead, he'd treat them like family. The scene then shifted back to Xiaoyu. She stood silently inside her old workplace wearing her new clothes, while sunlight slowly peeked through the clouds outside the city skyline. For the first time in forever, the world almost looked peaceful again. Xiaoming walked up behind her holding the repaired ribbon. He awkwardly admitted that it was a little damaged, but he tried fixing it as best he could. Then he told her not to get mad if it didn't look perfect. After placing the ribbon back onto her head, he happily asked her to look at it. Xiaoyu slowly brought her hands together in front of herself and quietly touched the ribbon. A gentle breeze passed through the room, and then she smiled. Just a tiny smile. But Xiaoming noticed it immediately and almost got flustered on the spot. The man instantly started second-guessing himself and wondered if he imagined it. Meanwhile, Xiaoyu tilted her head looking confused about why he suddenly looked embarrassed. From there, the story officially marked the beginning of their journey to build a post-apocalyptic company together. Xiaoming declared that he would recover every single one of her memory fragments. The ruined city filled with zombies stretched endlessly before them, while he reflected on everything that happened. He used to be a complete failure. His company collapsed, his friend betrayed him, and he was fully prepared to end his own life. Then the zombie apocalypse happened, and somehow, 5 days later, he was still alive. During those 5 days, he continuously explored the system and unlocked more abilities. He could recruit zombie employees, complete missions, and earn rewards through tasks. As long as he used those abilities properly, he believed he could quickly build a strong team. Meanwhile, Xiaoyu kept casually kicking zombie faces in with the same terrifying efficiency as always. Xiaoming had also improved. Now he was slicing through zombies himself, using his knife instead of just screaming and running for his life every chapter. Character growth. As he fought beside her, he quietly smiled and admitted to himself that he hadn't felt this alive in a very long time. It almost felt like he was finally recovering piece by piece. Then he casually called out to the system and asked if there were any new tasks available for him. The system immediately displayed a new task telling Xiaoming to stock up on resources. The man practically lit up after reading it. Finally, a mission aligned perfectly with his natural talents, scavenging free stuff during societal collapse. Happy, he turned around to call Xiaoyu, but the girl just stood there staring blankly ahead again. Xiaoming noticed she had been acting even stranger than usual that day. Considering she was already a superhuman zombie employee, that statement carried some weight. Still, he brushed the thought aside and declared that they should take advantage of the apocalypse to go shopping without paying. Truly the mindset of a bankrupt entrepreneur adapting to the end times. Soon the two entered a convenience store packed with zombies. Naturally, Xiaoyu immediately got to work kicking undead bodies around the store like she was clearing inventory before closing time. Meanwhile, Xiaoming calmly searched the shelves for supplies. He happily realized that with Xiaoyu handling the zombies around them, he could finally relax while collecting food. 2 zombies tried sneaking toward them, but Xiaoyu casually launched them through the air with a kick. That was when Xiaoming noticed something strange. Her attacks looked weaker than before. Previously, zombies she kicked practically entered low orbit. Today, they were just getting tossed around the store. One flying zombie even crashed into a shelf and accidentally knocked down some canned food. Ironically, it helped Xiaoming discover exactly what he wanted. He crouched down, picked up the item, and happily realized it was canned Sanhui lunch meat. The man immediately praised Xiaoyu's incredible kicking abilities for assisting his shopping experience. But when he called out to her, she didn't respond. She simply stood motionless in the middle of the store. When he called her name again, she slowly turned toward him, and Xiaoming realized she was crying. Immediately worried, he hurried toward her and asked what happened. But right then, a zombie suddenly grabbed his leg. Xiaoming instantly realized the horrifying truth. The zombies Xiaoyu defeated earlier weren't actually dead. One by one, the other zombies she knocked down slowly started getting back up and surrounding them. He quickly grabbed Xiaoyu's hand and demanded the system explain what was wrong with her. The system calmly informed him that she had entered a hungry state. Because of that, her overall performance had dropped dramatically. Xiaoming immediately asked how he was supposed to feed her. While backing away from the approaching zombies, the system explained that employee food could be exchanged using points. Xiaoming instantly ordered the transaction. The system then casually announced that the employee meal would be ready in 30 minutes. Xiaoming pulled out his knife and started cutting through zombies while desperately protecting Xiaoyu behind him. Soon they found themselves completely surrounded. Xiaoyu stood behind him tearfully while more and more zombies closed in from every direction. Xiaoming stared at the endless crowd and wondered when this entire store became a zombie convention. For a second, he genuinely thought they were both going to die there. Then suddenly, he heard a girl's voice calling out to him from nearby. A girl standing near a door motioned for him to follow her. Grinding his teeth, Xiaoming made a quick decision. Holding Xiaoyu's hand tightly with one hand and his knife with the other, he charged forward while yelling for the zombies not to block his path. He slammed directly into one zombie and shouted at it for not realizing his employee was hungry and he was in a hurry. The poor undead got shoved across the room, pinned to the tip of his knife, while Xiaoming forced his way toward the door. The moment they got through, the door slammed shut behind them. Breathing heavily, Xiaoming started thanking the girl who saved them and admitted they would have been in serious trouble otherwise. Then he looked up and found a knife pointed directly at his throat. The girl calmly told him there was no need to rush the thanks. Another voice ordered him to hand over all the food he collected. Xiaoming quickly realized he was surrounded by multiple armed people. The girl repeated that she didn't want to hurt him, but he needed to hand everything over. Internally, Xiaoming understood he was at a major disadvantage until Xiaoyu recovered from her hungry state. The others pressured him again, warning they'd simply take everything by force if he refused. But instead of panicking, Xiaoming suddenly smiled. He calmly said he'd give them food. The man opened a can of beans and showed it to them. Two starving men instantly rushed over and started devouring the food without hesitation. These dudes were eating like the can owed them money. Xiaoming casually told them to slow down because there was enough for everyone. The girl apologized for their behavior and explained they hadn't found food in days. She admitted they weren't originally like this, but surviving among zombies changed people. Xiaoming found it surprising that they chose starving inside a warehouse instead of risking trips outside for supplies, even with zombies roaming around. Then another man stepped forward and demanded all of Xiaoming's food and water. Xiaoming immediately replied that the guy was asking for way too much, but someone else behind him argued that since he was generous enough to hand out food already, he obviously had plenty more hidden away and wouldn't die from sharing a little extra. Xiaoming finally snapped and called the group out directly. These people were too scared to fight zombies outside, yet somehow found the courage to gang up on one exhausted guy carrying groceries. Truly humanity's finest survivors. Right then, another man walked up behind him and told the bigger guy to start searching thoroughly. The girl tried stopping them, reminding everyone that Xiaoming already shared food willingly and there was no reason to go this far. But the man named Wang coldly replied that a little girl like her didn't understand reality anymore. The world had already ended. And according to him, if you didn't rob people now, someone else would rob you first. Hearing that nonsense, Xiaoming sighed and pretended to give up. He told them to just take whatever they wanted. The group immediately started searching through his belongings, while Xiaoyu stood nearby motionless like always. Then suddenly, a strange noise echoed from the ventilation duct above them. Something inside the vent started moving. At the same time, the men continued searching Xiaoming while he quietly realized something dangerous. If they found his weapon, he'd be completely helpless afterward. Then he suddenly announced that he had tied a can of meat to his leg. Everyone froze. The starving group immediately turned toward him in disbelief and started yelling over each other about the hidden food. These people transformed into wild animals the moment can meat entered the conversation. Xiaoming instantly realized this was the perfect distraction. He grabbed the can and threw it far across the room while yelling that whoever wanted it should go get it themselves. The can landed in the distance, and every single person immediately abandoned him to sprint after it. One skinny guy rushed ahead drooling while bragging that those fat idiots could never outrun him. The man grabbed the can victoriously like he had just secured world peace. One of the heavier guys complained that the can had literally landed just one shelf beyond his reach. Bro lost the Apocalypse Olympics because of cardio. Then suddenly, the can dropped to the floor by itself. The others looked around in confusion and asked where the skinny guy disappeared to. Meanwhile, one woman bluntly stated she didn't care what happened as long as she got the meat. Survival mode had completely deleted everybody's morality settings. The young girl, named Xiaojing, suddenly told Auntie Su to calm down. But a second later, one of the men screamed at her to run. The aunt was now lying on the ground staring in horror at something directly ahead of her. The man desperately begged for help while Xiaojing stood frozen, unable to process what she was seeing. Meanwhile, Xiaoming noticed the ropes binding him were ridiculously tight. Suddenly, Xiaojing and the uncle came running back toward him in complete panic. Xiaoming wondered why they returned so fast. The girl quickly untied him while shouting for him to run immediately. At that same moment, Xiaoyu slowly lifted her head as if she sensed something dangerous nearby. Xiaoming asked what happened. Trembling, the girl explained that Auntie Su had been eaten. Xiaoming immediately asked if zombies attacked her. But before she could explain properly, something slammed violently against the wall above them. Then they finally saw it. A horrifying creature covered in countless eyes and giant teeth stared directly at them. The thing looked like some nightmare squid mutant with a massive mouth stretching across its body. Xiaoming couldn't even tell whether it was a monster or some horribly evolved zombie. One man sprinted desperately away from the creature while the monster chased him with its gigantic mouth open wide. A second later, the mouth snapped shut around him completely, leaving only his hands sticking out before they disappeared too. Xiaoming and Xiaojing could only stare in disbelief at the nightmare unfolding in front of them. Meanwhile, The uncle immediately abandoned everybody and rushed toward the exit door. The man desperately thought he couldn't die in a place like this and needed to escape immediately. Seeing his intention, Xiaoming shouted at him not to open the door. Too late. The moment the uncle cracked it open, a zombie face was already waiting outside with its mouth open. Naturally, the idiot got bitten instantly. Xiaoming could only think that these people were unbelievably stupid. With the door open, more zombies immediately started pouring inside. Xiaoming pulled out his knife and started fighting while analyzing the situation. The squid monster didn't seem physically stronger than Xiaoyu, but there were too many enemies around them. He just needed to survive long enough somehow. Right then, the system announced that the current task had been upgraded to dangerous status. The monster slowly started approaching them again. Xiaojing hid behind Xiaoyu while the zombie girl remained completely expressionless as usual. Xiaoming called out his employee's name, but while turning toward her, a zombie took the opportunity to rush him. He barely managed to block it in time. At this point, Xiaoming genuinely thought everything might end there. Then the system suddenly announced that collaborative work mode had been activated due to the dangerous conditions threatening the host. Immediately afterward, the system declared that Xiaoyu's collaborative mode was now active. Suddenly, the scars covering Xiaoyu's body began peeling away from her skin. The living scars then wrapped themselves around Xiaoming's body instead. Staring at the strange markings spreading across him, Xiaoming wondered what exactly this collaborative work mode even did. And right as the monsters closed in around them, the system calmly began explaining the details. A zombie suddenly rushed toward Xiaoming, but before the thing could even touch him, he threw a lightning-fast punch and blasted it flying away. Another zombie got dangerously close to Xiaojing, making the poor girl scream in terror. Xiaoming immediately jumped in and slashed the zombie clean across the back with his knife. At that point, he basically told the system it could stop explaining already. Whatever collaborative mode was, the punch alone explained enough. While carving through more zombies, he asked if his physical abilities had become equal to his employees. The system clarified that it was specifically their attribute values that synchronized together. Right then, a zombie tried sneaking up behind him, only for its skull to get smashed apart when Xiaoyu casually dropped a club on its head. Then the zombie girl calmly walked over while chewing food in her mouth, like she just clocked out for lunch break mid-apocalypse. Seeing her eating again, Xiaoming immediately realized she had recovered. He happily pointed out that things would be much easier now that she was back at full battery. Then he looked toward the squid monster and declared that the two of them could finish this quickly. The pair instantly charged toward the creature together. The monster lashed out with its tentacles, but both of them moved too fast and dodged every strike easily. As soon as they got close enough, Xiaoming called out to Xiaoyu after spotting an opening. The next thing they showed was the monster's body completely covered in cuts and holes. One terrified survivor watching nearby commented that the two of them were ridiculously strong and thanked the heavens he never tried fighting them himself. Smartest person in the room, honestly. Sometime later, Xiaoming finally sighed in relief and said they made it out safely, completed the mission, and even got food out of it. Then Xiaojing suddenly ran after him, telling him to wait. She admitted that she and the others probably wouldn't survive alone. Another guy added that Xiaoming was incredibly skilled in combat. The girl was clearly about to ask him to join forces with them permanently, but Xiaoming instantly shut it down before she could even finish speaking. Bro hit her with the fastest absolutely not in apocalypse history. He reminded them there was already food, water, and weapons inside the warehouse, and said helping them earlier was enough repayment for letting him hide there. Then he bluntly added that he had zero interest in working together with people who previously pointed knives at him. Fair point, honestly. After wishing them luck, he turned around and left with Xiaoyu. Later on, he remembered that he still hadn't used the reward lottery from the mission. Excited again, he opened the system window and activated another spin. The roulette wheel appeared in front of him dramatically once more. Xiaoming waited excitedly for something overpowered, only for the reward to end up being bread and coffee. The man stared at the food in disbelief. Bro survived mutant monsters just to roll breakfast combo number 1. Meanwhile, Xiaoyu stood nearby, staring at the snack with her usual blank face. Except this time, she was very obviously drooling a little. Xiaoming tested it by moving the bread sideways. Her eyes followed it perfectly. Yep, zombie girl locked on target. Amused, he handed some food over to her, and even though her face barely changed, she looked genuinely happy while eating it. The system immediately notified him that feeding an employee their favorite breakfast had increased loyalty and unlocked a skill slot. Smiling, Xiaoming told her that if she ever wanted food again, he'd definitely get it for her. The system then displayed 3 available skills for the slot: Violent God of War, Immortal God of War, and Furious God of War. Xiaoming complained that choosing blindly was annoying and that testing them first would make way more sense. Surprisingly, the system agreed but warned him he'd have to choose one permanently afterward. To test them properly, they headed toward a port area near the previous mission zone. The place was packed with zombies and wide open spaces between shipping containers. Basically a perfect testing ground. Sitting on top of a container, Xiaoming told the system he wanted to test Furious God of War first. Xiaoyu instantly sprinted toward the nearby zombies. She suddenly stopped, charged energy into her wrist, then threw a punch forward. One punch, that was it, and the zombies all got launched flying through the air like bowling pins hit by a truck. Xiaoming was immediately impressed. That ability massively boosted her destructive power and crowd-clearing speed. Then he moved on to testing Immortal God of War. A green aura suddenly surrounded Xiaoyu as she let out a scream. Immediately afterward, every zombie in the area turned toward her at once. Xiaoming quickly realized what the skill actually did. Instead of boosting attack power, this one attracted all the zombies and absorbed their hostility directly onto her. Xiaoming quickly realized that the Immortal God of War skill did more than just pull zombie aggro. The green glow spreading across Xiaoyu's scars started healing her wounds in real time too. So the skill was basically zombie taunt plus regeneration. After seeing enough, he immediately asked the system to test the final skill, Violent God of War. The moment the ability activated, Xiaoyu's hair lifted upward from the pressure of the energy building around her. Even her expression changed slightly. Somehow she looked even more serious than usual. Then she moved. An absolute chaos followed. Xiaoming watched her blitz through zombies at terrifying speed, while the system explained that her attack power drastically increased under this mode, but she would suffer a cooldown afterward. After unleashing that burst of energy, red aura started flowing off her body, while she used a shipping container as a launch platform and leaped straight into another pack of zombies. Bodies flew everywhere, dust exploded upward. Entire groups got folded instantly. One unlucky zombie was launched toward a girl standing nearby, but the girl casually caught its head midair. Then energy exploded directly from her hand. Both Xiaoming and Xiaoyu immediately noticed her presence. The girl wore black clothes, had white hair, and spikes protruding from her elbows like the apocalypse decided to start designing anime bosses. Xiaoming instantly noticed the mutations and wondered if she was another mutant zombie. Without hesitation, Xiaoyu sprinted across the containers and launched a kick at her. The white-haired girl blocked it, cleanly, even with Violent God of War active. That was when Xiaoming understood this thing was completely different from every zombie they'd encountered so far. At the same time, he noticed Violent God of War's effects starting to fade. If the fight dragged on, they were cooked. So he immediately activated collaborative work mode again and rushed in himself. He shouted for Xiaoyu to retreat while synchronization activated between them. The two turned and started running while the white-haired mutant chased after them at insane speed. Looking back, Xiaoming admitted the thing was ridiculously fast. As they kept running, more figures suddenly appeared ahead. Thinking they were zombies, Xiaoming instantly drew his knife and charged. Then one of them screamed not to kill him. Turns out the zombie was just a terrified living guy. Xiaoming abruptly stopped his attack, grabbed the dude anyway, and started dragging him along while running. The poor guy kept yelling and asking who the hell he was while begging not to get dragged like luggage. Xiaoming told him to calm down and stop panicking. Then the white-haired mutant showed up behind them. The same guy who was saying stay calm immediately pointed at her and started screaming that she was a mutant zombie. Xiaoming sarcastically asked if he still wanted everyone to calm down now. The dude instantly switched sides and told them to keep running. Character development achieved in 3 seconds. While sprinting away, Xiaoming kept thinking that even if she was a mutant, she was still technically a zombie. There had to be some weakness. He suddenly turned into an alley and told the others to follow him. Unfortunately, the alley was a dead end. Classic apocalypse navigation skills. The white-haired mutant caught up immediately, forcing Xiaoyu to engage her again. Watching the fight, Xiaoming realized Xiaoyu probably couldn't beat her head-on. He needed another plan fast. Then he smelled something strange in the air. He immediately turned toward the other survivor and demanded his backpack. The confused guy kept asking why while removing it. Xiaoming basically told him there was no time for questions if he wanted to live. The second he got the bag, he started spinning it overhead while telling Xiaoyu to fall back. Then he hurled the backpack straight above the mutant zombie. The white-haired girl instantly sliced the bag apart with ease, which was exactly what he wanted. Gasoline and flammable materials exploded out everywhere, soaking her body completely. The next second, Xiaoming flicked a lighter toward her and yelled for everyone to move back. Boom. Everything ignited instantly. Xiaoming already started celebrating before the lighter even landed. Man was emotionally invested in this plan. But even after being engulfed in flames, the mutant zombie calmly walked straight out of the fire toward them. At that point, the only valid response left was running for their lives.